We would like to begin this podcast stating this is merely from the perspective of three white people researching this topic and are not in any way trying to speak over people of color and their experiences.
Hey guys, it's you boys.
I'm Alexis.
I'm Alexa.
And I'm Ash.
And we are the
AAA Podcast. Today we are going to be discussing a few topics like the white savior complex, hashtag own voices, and issues with books and movies like The Help and American Dirt.
The Help and American Dirt are both prime examples of what happens when hashtag own voices isn't discussed.
So today we'll explain what that is. Own voices, hashtag own voices to be specific, encourage people to read stories written by authors with similar experiences as the book or story. An example would be The Vanishing Half, a book we're reading in English class right now, which is a book about colorism and is written by a Black author. Books like these are important to get recognized. When books are written by people without first-hand experience, it gives opportunity for stereotypes and overall just misinformation. Not enough Black Americans are being hired to write and direct movies. In a 2018 study, it was found that in the top 100 grossing movies, only 14% were directed by Black people. They're making fun of me. Often Black people are given a stereotypical role written by white people instead of accurate roles written by Black people. It's unreasonable to have books written. It's unreasonable to have books and stories written and published by white authors about diversity. Hashtag Own Voices addresses these issues by getting media attention, but still more needs to be done because this isn't enough.
Thanks. I mean, yeah, the own voices hashtag, it really is, like, it's helpful, but it's not enough.
And along with, a lot of people think own voices means only telling your story and only having characters written that are like you, which is just not true. You should write Black characters, write LGBTQ characters, but don't make the entire story about that story if you do not relate to that story. Especially because a lot of Black authors don't get up to being published or getting their books in top charts, right? So you need to be able to amplify those Black voices and make sure that you write your story without overstepping and writing the wrong story, writing the wrong narrative, and writing characters that aren't accurate.
Because at that point you're just speaking over people.
Yeah, don't speak over people, but make sure to write in diverse characters, and don't make it about their story. Just write in diverse characters. A lot of people, usually their life doesn't revolve around being Black or being LGBTQ or being Mexican or being whatever they are. Their life doesn't revolve around that. They have lots of different stories that don't revolve around that.
Yeah, okay. So, I have a few issues with the movie The Help. I mean, number one, it treats the issue as if being friends with Black people will solve the problem of racism. When in actuality, the thing that will actually prevent racism is breaking white solidarity and calling out other people on racist patterns that they prevent. I mean, people can be friends with Black people and still actively contribute to racism and racist systems, but many white people are just too scared to be outcast or ridiculed. They're too afraid of the consequences to be taken out of their position of comfort and their position of power to actually interrupt the racism because they're just too afraid to do it. I mean, we have the allowance that we can just not interrupt it because we feel uncomfortable doing so. If Black people are going to be made uncomfortable by it no matter what happens. They don't have that choice, but we do have the choice. We can speak out against it. We can actually make a difference and try to dismantle the system that we did create and that we still have in place. And the other issue I had with the movie is that it really tries to act like we are some of the characters, the white characters, that are on the same level as some of the Black characters in terms of being oppressed, in terms of being outcasted. It tries to give some of the white characters a victim complex so that we will like them more and we'll feel for them more. And the truth is that those characters are actively contributing to racism probably just as much as the other characters, just less blatantly and less obviously. Characters like Skeeter and Celia, who just, it seems like it's supposed to be oh, woe is me, I'm
Yeah,
I'm
a poor
an
white
outcast.
person. We're talking about black activists or talking about black people's issues, and now suddenly I'm outcasted from society because I'm not racist. Like, that's not true. Like, you're still white. You still have white privileges.
You still have acceptance.
Like, you won't get killed for being white. That you're not going to face those issues.
Mhm.
So giving these white characters a victim complex and putting them in the same place,
It's just taking away from the black stories.
It's taking away from black issues and making it seem like black issues and white issues are like on the same level. Like, it's just not true. And
Okay.
it sets expectation. Speaking of white people, Janine Cummins, who is a white woman, wrote a novel about a Mexican woman traveling from Mexico to America with her son Luca. The novel was very successful, and it even got to Oprah's book club. And if you think about it, there's a lot of things actually wrong with that sentence. A white woman talking about a Mexican woman traveling from Mexico to America, which is a very true story, something that happens to a lot of people. But she obviously can't experience that story because she's white and she's never traveled. But this novel raises a lot of conversations about cultural appropriation and publishing industry whitewashing, which is the publishing industry allowing these white writers to get more successful than black and Mexican writers. And in response to this criticism, Janine Cummins said that her grandmother was from Puerto Rico, as if that has anything to do with
literally Mexican, Puerto Rican, different things.
Completely different. And it's not talking about her grandmother from Puerto Rico. Her grandmother's an immigrant from Puerto Rico. She moved, well, I guess it's immigration, but she moved to America. She has never experienced that, and she didn't really talk to her grandma about that. Totally different stories, completely
trying to cover it up.
It's not an excuse. It's not an excuse for writing a story that isn't yours to tell and having it get popular, which is, I think there's so many stories that could get popular that aren't written by a white person.
Yeah.
And the book, if you read it, it was clearly written for suburban, middle-class readers, and there's few Spanish words. The main character is a resilient working mom hero, and she's meant to resonate with the middle class. You often have that middle class mom, working mom stereotype, and it's meant to resonate with them. We are supposed to relate to the character, even though she's going through a different experience than a white person would go through.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the same story. They can't really be related to each other. And in the author's note, Cummins said she wanted her readers to know that the people coming to our southern border are not one faceless brown mass, but singular individuals with stories and backgrounds and reasons for coming that are unique. And while this is true, she's a white woman writing about that, which obviously shows the white savior complex, that she thinks that because writing their story and getting it popular and getting her readers to hear the story will suddenly make them less racist.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's not what's going to happen. Readers aren't going to read them and think, oh, well, let's not be racist anymore because they have a story. Obviously, they have a story, but they should read it from the perspective of a Mexican person coming from Mexico to America. They shouldn't read it from the perspective of a white woman, or even worse, the perspective of a white woman thinking from the perspective of a Mexican woman. Which just relates to, the story of own voices, or the hashtag own voices. Because when you're writing a story that's not yours, you're bound to make mistakes. And even if you don't, you're speaking over people who are trying to tell their story. There's plenty of Mexican writers writing their story, and we just don't hear about them because they're getting spoken over.
They don't get published.
They don't get published. There's not enough publishers that are Mexican or black. There's just not enough diversity in the publishing industry. And if you try and say, comparing it to writing a story about aliens, something that you can't relate to, you're not an alien, right? But nobody can relate to an alien, because aliens, as we know of, don't exist in our... We don't know about aliens. We've never met an alien. So we won't be able to write the story about an alien from a perspective of an alien. You don't know.
It's just speculation. But with
with this
stories. It's
Mexican
not speculation. They
Mexican
exist.
people are so real. We can just talk to one. You can get a Mexican person to write stories. Encourage them to write their story. Get them published. Help them get published. That's a way to be helpful without having that white savior
Without
complex,
overstepping.
without overstepping. But yeah, writing fictional things about things that are fictional, about real life stories, is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
But let me ask this question: if aliens were real and we knew about them, if we knew an alien, would we be able to write their story?
No.
Well, no, 'cause we're not an alien.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not an alien.
I
So
guess, yeah.
I think if
That really
aliens,
sums.
if we met aliens, I think this would still apply. Is that we should get the aliens to write their story, or we have to teach
If
them
they
English.
could.
We have to teach them English first.
Okay.
So, Leslie, thank you so much for joining us in our discussion on the dangers of the white savior. It is really important to expand your knowledge and talk about these things, especially as white people. Like, we need to just have this type of discussion.
Okay, so this has been the AAA podcast.
See y'all next time.
Bye.